with Dmitry Babich, a political analyst at Sputnik International. He joins us now from Moscow. Thank you so much for joining us. Moscow is accusing the United States of ratcheting up tensions by putting several thousand troops on alert. But 8,500 soldiers is a drop in the ocean compared with Russia's 100,000 plus troops along Ukraine's border. How is the Kremlin likely to feel about the US and NATO's latest movements?
Well, it's not several thousand troops. President Biden announced that 50,000 additional U.S. troops will be coming to Eastern Europe soon. Also, let me remind you that the United States and their allies have now naval exercises called Neptune Strike 22. And they accuse us of conducting exercises, even though Russia conducts exercises on its own territory, while the United States and NATO conduct them right next to our biggest cities, you know, St. Petersburg and on the Black Sea. So militarily, of course, it makes no sense for Russia to invade Ukraine. 100,000 troops is not enough to occupy a 40 million country. And also, we would hate to do it because we consider Ukrainians a fraternal nation. We were in the same country for 400 years, before even the United States was founded. So all of these talks are pure speculations. Please look at all the statements from Vladimir Putin and Russian officials. None of them talked, none of them even imagined invading Ukraine during the last year. So this is just a hysteria, which is dangerous, and which reminds me of Iraq in 2003. When the United States and the European Union, instead of talking about their own aggression, kept talking about weapons of mass destruction in the hands of Saddam.
Well, as this military build-up continues on both sides, we know diplomatic efforts are still underway. They've so far failed to de-escalate tensions. In fact, they've risen since talks have taken place. Is Russia even interested in a diplomatic solution? And what will it take for Moscow to draw down its presence near Ukraine?
Well, look, NATO has been refusing to talk to us since 2014. NATO-Russia Council, which was founded in 1997, was basically passive. You know, we almost had no meetings since the Ukrainian crisis started by the violent coup in 2014, which deposed the legally elected president. So if, thanks to this deployment, at least we have talks now for the first time in 7 years, that is already a result. Even though, of course, Russia is not preparing to attack Ukraine. And let me remind you that there are 120,000 Ukrainian troops stationed right next to two of their regions, which are not rebellious, but which just refuse to recognize the ousting of the legally elected president in 2014. So Russia is very interested in the diplomatic solution. We are waiting for a written response to our proposals. We didn't get it, even though several weeks have passed. And also, let me remind you that it was Russia who initiated these talks. The United States and the EU have been passive on talks for the last 7 years.
Yes, and the White House says the US has a sacred obligation to support the security of our eastern flank countries. NATO members, as we heard there, are now mobilizing fighter jets and warships in the region. Doesn't Ukraine, shouldn't they be awarded the right to protect themselves with its allies in the presence of such a large contingent of Russian fighters along its border?
Look, Ukraine is not a NATO member, and Russian troops are not stationed in Ukraine. They are stationed on our territory. The budget, the military budget of NATO is 18 times bigger than the Russian one. The American budget is 14 times bigger, and NATO's allies in Europe, they have budgets 4 times bigger than Russia's. So how can anyone imagine that Russia would be attacking NATO or its allies with this juxtaposition of forces? It looks like the United States and the EU want to deflect attention from the real problem. And the real problem is NATO's expansion to the borders of Russia. instead, they keep talking about a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine, which they themselves invented, because Putin or any Russian government officials never talked about attacking Ukraine or taking Kiev. This is all kind of media strategy, which reminds us of US actions before the Iraqi war and before their attack against Libya. They accuse the leaders of other countries of all possible sins, while in the end, they are the aggressors. They become the aggressors. And preventing the imagined aggressions, they commit real aggressions, which everyone has seen.
Okay, Dmitry Babich from Sputnik International, thank you very much again for joining us on the NewsHour.